Tiffany Henyard's political career in Dalton, Illinois, has taken a dramatic and shocking turn. Once regarded as a rising political force, she now finds herself at the heart of a massive scandal that has rocked the small town and left its residents in disbelief. Henyard, who has held two political positions simultaneously, mayor of Dalton and an undisclosed role in another municipality, was arrested by the FBI during a recent city council meeting on charges of embezzling $2 million in public funds. The arrest was just the latest chapter in a long history of political turmoil for Henyard. Rumors of corruption and financial mismanagement had surrounded her for months, but the revelations about her alleged theft have shocked even her harshest critics. This scandal is not just about the embezzlement of taxpayer money. It's a betrayal of public trust. For years, the mayor had promised to improve the village's crumbling infrastructure and public services, but instead, it appears that Henyard used taxpayer money for her own personal gain, leaving Dalton in a state of financial ruin. What makes the scandal even more explosive is the revelation that Henyard is accused of spending the stolen funds on personal luxuries, further fueling outrage among the town's residents. The very money that was supposed to improve roads, fix the water system, and provide essential services was allegedly diverted into her personal accounts. For many Dalton residents, the betrayal cuts deep. One resident summed up the anger of the community, stating, "She should be fixing the streets, not lining her pockets." The news has sent shockwaves throughout the town. What was once a quiet village is now grappling with the realization that their mayor, who they trusted to manage their community's future, has taken advantage of that trust for personal gain. The FBI's involvement in the investigation has only intensified the situation, with new details emerging daily about the extent of the alleged fraud. As the investigation unfolds, it becomes clear that Henyard's actions were not just isolated incidents. Reports suggest that her embezzlement scheme was part of a larger, well-organized effort to divert public funds for her own benefit. Her political career, once seen as a promise of change, now stands as a symbol of the corruption that has plagued Dalton's government for years. The anger in Dalton has reached a boiling point. The people who once looked to Henyard as a leader now feel betrayed. As one resident put it, "We put our trust in her to make our lives better, and this is what we get in return." The sense of betrayal goes beyond the loss of money. It represents a complete collapse of trust in the local government. For many, the thought that the very leader they elected to fix the town's problems has instead stolen from them is devastating, adding to the chaos. Henyard recently announced her intention to run for re-election, despite the overwhelming evidence against her. This decision has sparked outrage, with many residents questioning how she could possibly ask for their votes after allegedly stealing from them. One frustrated citizen condemned her for daring to seek re-election while allegedly continuing to steal from the very people she was elected to serve. The backlash has only intensified, and it seems increasingly unlikely that Henyard will win another term, as if her political career wasn't already in freefall. Henyard now faces a lawsuit for eviction. Despite reportedly earning a six-figure salary as mayor, she has allegedly failed to pay rent on her property since August. Her landlord, Janetta Ho, took legal action to evict Henyard, further tarnishing her already damaged reputation. This revelation adds yet another layer of scandal, highlighting the stark contrast between Henyard's ability to manage the town's finances and her apparent inability to manage her own personal affairs. Ho, the landlord, expressed deep disappointment in Henyard, stating that she had trusted the mayor as a reliable tenant. However, when it became clear that Henyard had not paid rent for months, that trust evaporated. Even more troubling, reports indicate that Henyard changed the locks on the property, preventing Ho from carrying out the eviction. This behavior has only reinforced the public's perception that Henyard is out of touch with reality and incapable of managing either her personal life or the financial affairs of Dalton. This pattern of personal and professional mismanagement mirrors the broader issues of corruption and poor decision-making that have characterized Henyard's time in office. The public is increasingly disillusioned with her leadership, especially given her apparent inability to meet basic financial obligations like paying rent. If she cannot manage her own finances, how can she be trusted to manage the financial stability of an entire town? The anger and frustration of Dalton's residents are palpable. Many are asking how someone who has allegedly stolen from them and failed to meet even basic financial responsibilities could continue to hold a position of power. The investigation into the alleged embezzlement has only deepened the public's distrust in Henyard, as each new revelation paints a picture of a leader who is completely disconnected from the needs of her constituents rather than stepping down in the face of mounting evidence. Henyard has doubled down on her political ambitions. This decision has only further alienated the community. It is widely seen as a desperate attempt to cling to power, demonstrating just how out of touch she has become with the realities of her situation. The people of Dalton, who once saw Henyard as a capable leader, now view her as an embodiment of everything wrong with their local government. What began as a series of questionable decisions has spiraled into a full-blown crisis, one that will likely take years to heal. The situation in Dalton is dire. The town's infrastructure is in disrepair, public services are underfunded, and trust in the local government has been shattered. The FBI investigation into Henyard's actions is ongoing, and it is likely that the full extent of her alleged crimes has yet to be revealed. As her political career continues to unravel, Dalton is left to pick up the pieces of community that has been deeply betrayed by the very leader they entrusted with their future. Henyard's insistence on running for re-election, despite the overwhelming evidence of her corruption and mismanagement, is seen by many as an attempt to hold on to power at all costs. However, the public's anger is growing, and it seems unlikely that she will be able to recover from the damage to her reputation. With each new revelation, her chances of winning another term grow slimmer, and many believe that her political career is all but over. The road to rebuilding Dalton will be long and difficult. The community will have to work hard to restore faith in local government and repair the damage caused by Henyard's actions. For many, this will be a painful process, as they struggle to come to terms with the realization that their leader, someone they once trusted to improve their lives, has betrayed them in such a profound way. As the FBI investigation continues, the people of Dalton are left to wonder whether their town will ever fully recover from the damage caused by Henyard's actions. The scandal has left the town in crisis, and it is unclear how long it will take to rebuild the trust and institutions that have been shattered. One thing is certain, however. Henyard's political career is unlikely to survive the fallout from the scandal, and the damage to her public image may be irreparable. What began as a promising political career has now devolved into a spectacle of corruption, mismanagement, and personal drama. Henyard's actions have undermined the very fabric of Dalton's local government, and the community will be grappling with the consequences for years to come. As the investigation unfolds and more details come to light, it is clear that Henyard's time in office is quickly coming to an end. The real question now is whether Dalton can ever rebuild from the wreckage she has left behind. Tiffany Henyard's tenure as mayor of Dalton, Illinois, has transformed into a series of shocking, bizarre, and ultimately self-destructive actions that have alienated both her community and her political allies. What was once a promising political career has devolved into chaos, scandal, and dysfunction, with Henyard's increasingly erratic behavior now a focal point of public anger and disillusionment. Henyard, once celebrated with promotional banners heralding her as a super mayor, is now under intense scrutiny. Rather than accepting the mounting criticisms of her leadership, she has resorted to lashing out at anyone who dares question her authority. In one particularly bizarre moment, she called the police to arrest workers who were removing promotional banners from town property. Henyard accused them of stealing government property, a move that only highlighted her growing fixation on protecting her own narrative and personal gain rather than fulfilling her role as a public servant. Workers who were present at the time described her behavior as alarming, with one noting that Henyard seemed more focused on pushing her own agenda than on the needs of the town she was elected to serve. As tensions in the community escalated, Henyard's increasingly erratic actions began to further isolate her from the rest of the town's leadership. In a moment that underscored the widening rift between her and the township, Supervisor might call for a special meeting to approve funding for events that Henyard had requested the township support. However, the meeting was abruptly canceled when not a single trustee showed up. This abandonment of Henyard's proposed agenda was symbolic of the growing fracture between her and the very people she was supposed to be working with. It left her more isolated than ever over time. Henyard's fixation on power and control became more apparent. Public gatherings meant to address the pressing issues of the town, such as crumbling infrastructure and financial difficulties, devolved into chaotic events filled with shouting matches, walkouts, and even police involvement. These meetings, which were supposed to be forums for democratic discussion and problem-solving, instead became showcases for Henyard's increasingly unpredictable behavior. It became clear that Henyard was more interested in making these events about her personal drama than addressing the real concerns of Dalton's residents. Perhaps the most alarming episode during Henyard's embattled tenure came when she attempted to appoint an unqualified individual to the position of police chief, a move widely viewed as a blatant attempt to consolidate power. Critics of the mayor voiced concerns, pointing out the lack of qualifications for the individual, yet Henyard dismissed these objections as simple jealousy. This response further deepened the public's doubts about her understanding of governance and her ability to lead effectively. Instead of listening to concerns of the people she was elected to serve, Henyard's reaction was to deflect, dismiss, and ignore the very real issues facing the community. As the days passed, Henyard's behavior became increasingly erratic and disconnected from the challenges facing the town. Rumors of federal investigations into her actions swirled, with new reports emerging that federal authorities had begun interviewing witnesses as part of an ongoing probe. While the full scope of the investigation remains unclear, the possibility of criminal charges looms large. It's evident that Henyard's political future is in serious jeopardy, and the walls are closing around her. One of the most surreal developments of her already bizarre tenure, Henyard took to Facebook Live to broadcast a 90-minute tirade against her critics. The broadcast, which she likely intended to portray herself as a victim of conspiracy, only further damage her already tarnished public image. During the live stream, Henyard threatened to have anyone who opposed her arrested, a move that shocked viewers and deepened the public's perception of her growing authoritarian tendencies. One resident remarked that this act of threatening arrest, simply for disagreeing with her, was a stark demonstration of Henyard's increasing desperation to maintain control at all costs. The live stream, instead of rallying support, only fueled perception that Henyard cared more about silencing opposition than addressing the issues plaguing Dalton as the investigation into her conduct continues. It becomes increasingly clear that Henyard has alienated not only her political opponents, but also many of her once loyal supporters. The deepening sense of disillusionment in Dalton is palpable. The very people who once believed in Henyard's ability to improve their community now feel betrayed by a leader who has completely lost touch with the needs of the people she swore to serve. The disarray in Dalton is now a direct result of Henyard's self-destructive decisions, and her reputation is in tatters despite the overwhelming evidence of her mismanagement and corruption. Henyard continues to act as though she is untouchable. Her defiant insistence on running for re-election in the face of widespread public opposition has only intensified the anger and frustration of Dalton's residents. One particularly striking example of her delusion came during a city council meeting when she boldly declared that she would win re-election in a landslide. Despite the ongoing scandals and the rapidly worsening condition of Dalton, she proclaimed, "I'm coming in strong. The people know the truth and they will stand by me," comparing herself to former President Donald Trump. Her statement was met not with cheers, but with widespread derision and uncomfortable laughter, highlighting the disconnect between Henyard's delusions and the reality of the situation. It became painfully clear that Henyard's actions had not only alienated her political opponents, but had also driven away many of the residents who had once supported her. The meeting, which was supposed to focus on the future of Dalton, quickly devolved into chaos. As Henyard's increasingly erratic behavior took center stage, it became evident that the mayor's personal drama and inability to govern were largely responsible for Dalton's current financial woes. Despite the town's inability to pay its bills and the failure of the Board of Trustees to show up for meetings, Henyard continued to cling to the illusion of control, treating her position as a personal platform for attention rather than a responsibility to serve her constituents. Henyard's grip on power has weakened by the day, yet she refuses to acknowledge the reality of her situation. As federal investigators continue to probe her conduct, the people of Dalton are left wondering how they were so thoroughly deceived by a leader who promised progress but has instead delivered scandal and dysfunction. The town is in crisis, and Henyard's defiant resistance to the growing tide of discontent only seems to push her political career closer to its inevitable collapse. The damage caused by Henyard's leadership may already be irreparable. Residents feel disillusioned and betrayed by a mayor who has squandered the trust placed in her and failed to address the town's most urgent needs. Henyard's refusal to step down, despite overwhelming evidence of her corruption and mismanagement, has only exacerbated the situation. Leaving Dalton in a state of chaos and uncertainty, the once promising rise of Tiffany Henyard has now been overshadowed by scandal, mismanagement, and an utter disregard for the welfare of the community. What began as a political career full of potential has spiraled into a disaster, with Henyard's increasingly erratic behavior serving as a constant reminder of her disconnection from reality. As the federal investigation continues and more details emerge, it's clear that Henyard's political future is hanging by a thread. Even if she is not criminally charged, her reputation is likely to remain permanently damaged, and the damage to Dalton's trust in local leadership may take years. To heal Henyard's legacy will likely be one of scandal, corruption, and self-destruction. The community that once believed in her vision for the future now finds itself grappling with the consequences of her failures. As her time in office comes to a close, Dalton faces an uncertain future, and the people of the town must now work to rebuild the trust that has been lost. The question remains, can Dalton recover from the damage caused by a leader who's put her own interest above the needs of the very people who elected her to serve them? Only time will tell. Tiffany Henyard's political career, once hailed as a promising rise to power, has rapidly deteriorated into a saga of corruption, scandal, and self-destruction. Initially portrayed as an underdog fighting for the people of Dalton and Thornton Township, Henyard's true motivations have slowly come to light. It now appears that her rise was not driven by a genuine desire to serve the community, but rather by a calculated effort to consolidate power and control, using her position for personal gain. Former allies, including figures like Carmen Ascent, have begun to shed light on Henyard's hidden agenda, revealing that her political ascent has been fueled by financial mismanagement and corruption from the very beginning. Evidence continues to link Henyard directly to the financial struggles of both Dalton and Thornton Township, leading many residents to realize the full extent of her failures as a leader. This growing awareness has sparked public outrage, and her one solid base of support is beginning to crumble. One of Henyard's most controversial decisions was her appointment of an unqualified candidate as police chief, a move widely seen as an attempt to further consolidate power. When confronted with criticism, Henyard's response was defensive and dismissive, showing a disturbing level of arrogance and a complete disregard for outside opinions. She refused to listen to anyone outside her inner circle, reinforcing her obsession with maintaining control at any cost, even if it meant breaking the law or ignoring the will of the people her inner circle, seemingly more interested in personal gain than serving the public, has thus far turned a blind eye to Henyard's mounting scandals, enabling her corrupt actions. However, that blind loyalty is now beginning to crumble, as more evidence of Henyard's financial mismanagement and disregard for communities' welfare comes to light. The public's growing frustration has only been worsened by Henyard's refusal to take responsibility for her actions or acknowledge the harm caused at Dalton and Thornton Township. One of the most shocking moments of her tenure came during a Facebook Live broadcast, where Henyard attempted to defend her record by comparing herself to former President Donald Trump. This bizarre defiance, in the face of mounting criticism, symbolized just how out of touch she had become with the reality of her situation. Instead of addressing the growing concerns or taking accountability for her failures, Henyard doubled down on her narrative, pretending that everything was fine. Her arrogant refusal to face the truth only fueled public anger, with the laughter that followed her Trump comparison at a recent council meeting, making it clear how disconnected Henyard had become from her constituents. Henyard's persistent defiance, refusal to resign, and blatant disregard for the dissatisfaction of her community have only heightened the calls for accountability. Once, the residents of Dalton and Thornton Township were hopeful that Henyard's leadership would bring change and progress. Now, those same residents are demanding justice for the years of corruption, mismanagement, and self-serving behavior that have characterized her time in office. Henyard's attempts to maintain power, once seen as a display of strength, now appear to be desperate efforts to hold on to a crumbling political career. Federal agents are reportedly interviewing witnesses as part of an ongoing investigation into Henyard's actions, and seems increasingly likely that she will face legal consequences for her conduct. Her most recent decision, to appoint a police chief who wasn't even certified, has sparked further outrage among both residents and local officials, further isolating her from the people she was elected to serve. As the situation continues to unfold, it is becoming clearer that Henyard's political career is unraveling. Her increasingly erratic behavior, refusal to acknowledge reality, and blatant disregard for law have left her facing the very real prospect of criminal charges. The question is no longer whether Henyard will be held accountable, but rather when that will happen. Henyard's reputation has been irreparably damaged by her actions, and as the federal investigation progresses, the full extent of her mismanagement and corruption is likely to be exposed. What was once seen as a promising political career is now viewed by many as a cautionary tale of arrogance, corruption, and self-destruction. The situation has reached new absurd levels, as Henyard filed a lawsuit against the trustees for holding meetings without her presence. This move only escalated tensions between her and the township, further exposing the toxic and divisive environment she has fostered. Public gatherings, which should have been focused on productive discussion and decision-making, have instead turned into chaotic spectacles. One resident even shouted during a meeting, urging Henyard to step down, calling her leadership disgraceful. As usual, Henyard avoided taking accountability for the situation, instead presenting herself as a victim of unfair attacks. When pressed about the growing disorder under her leadership, Henyard continued to deflect blame onto the trustees and denied any involvement in the troubling activities surrounding her administration. This included the controversy over an improperly registered foundation that was supposed to support local causes. Henyard claimed she had no idea what the foundation did or how much money it had raised. This statement only deepened suspicions that her leadership was built on a foundation of dubious actions and questionable decisions. Meanwhile, the FBI's investigation into Henyard's conduct has intensified, with even her most loyal supporters starting to question her motives and actions. As her circle of allies continues to shrink, the cracks in her leadership are becoming more and more apparent. Henyard's refusal to step down has created an atmosphere of disbelief and frustration among the residents of Dalton and Thornton Township. Many now view her situation not as a legitimate political scandal, but as a farce, an embarrassing display of arrogance and incompetence. In a recent Facebook post, Henyard defiantly declared, "They can try to tear me down, but I'm not going anywhere." This message only fueled a growing sense of collective anger from the community, further alienating her from the very people she was elected to serve. The longer Henyard clings to power, the more she risks facing the full consequences of her actions. The pressure from the public, combined with the ongoing federal investigation, is mounting, and it is increasingly difficult to see how she can remain in office much longer despite this. Henyard continues to refuse to step down, raising the question of whether her defiance and manipulation will allow her to hold on to office for even longer, or whether she will eventually be forced out. The situation is reaching a boiling point, and residents of Dalton and Thornton Township are watching with growing impatience. Eagerly awaiting the day when Henyard can no longer avoid the repercussions of her actions, the public is increasingly losing patience with Henyard, and the realization is setting in that her political career, once a symbol of potential, has unraveled due to corruption, financial mismanagement, and a series of self-destructive decisions. The pressure on Henyard is building, and it seems that her time in office is drawing to a close. But the only question that remains is, when will it happen, and how will it end? For now, the residents of Dalton and Thornton Township are left in a tense waiting game, hoping that justice will prevail and that their communities can begin to recover from the mess that Henyard has created. The investigation into her actions is far from over, and each new revelation only serves to further unravel the story of her fall from grace. What was once a promising leadership career has become a cautionary tale of corruption, arrogance, and defiance in the face of accountability. Henyard's refusal to step down and her blatant disregard for law have only served to alienate her from the people she was elected to serve. The damage caused by her leadership is clear, and the road to recovery for Dalton and Thornton Township will likely be long and difficult. Residents are demanding accountability, and as the investigation continues, it is becoming increasingly certain that Henyard's time in office is nearing its end. Whether she will face criminal charges or simply be voted out of office, one thing is certain: her reign is rapidly coming to a close. The people of Dalton and Thornton Township can only watch in disbelief as Henyard's political career unravels, hoping that justice will ultimately be served.